Hello and welcome to another episode of Bipolar Talks, where we take a mindful and honest look at mental health, especially bipolar disorder, through lived experience, open conversations, and real human connection. I'm so grateful that you're tuning in today. Whether you're here because you live with mental illness, care for someone who does, or you're just curious to learn more. Before we begin, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Your support helps us reach more people who might be struggling in silence and need to hear that they're not alone. Every little click is a seed of awareness planted, and we appreciate it deeply. Today, I want to talk to you about something very personal, something that's not often talked about, and something that might surprise you: how mental illness and physical illness can show up in almost identical ways, even though we tend to treat them very differently. Mental illness versus physical illness. Identical behavior? So let's begin with a simple but powerful question. Can mental illness make a person act the same way as someone with a physical illness? You might be thinking, well, mental illness is emotional and internal, right? And physical illness is something you can measure and scan for. But here's the thing: when you're in it, whether it's physical pain or mental instability, the way you behave, the way your body reacts, and the way your relationships get affected can look almost identical. This episode was inspired by a recent experience I had with my husband, Bryan. He's my rock, and in this episode he joined me as a guest to talk about how his physical condition, a rare spinal tumor, and my bipolar disorder can lead to almost the same daily behavior, even though our illnesses are completely different. Have you ever noticed that sometimes people going through very different issues still act in strikingly similar ways? It makes you wonder, right? Keep listening, this gets real. Bryan's physical illness: rare, real, and invisible. Bryan lives with something called an intramedullary epidermoid tumor. That's a spinal cord tumor growing inside the actual spinal cord. It's extremely rare. Fewer than 1% of spinal tumors are like this. And even though it's benign, it's still very serious. He was born with it, and the location of the tumor means that doctors can't fully remove it without causing serious nerve damage. He's had surgeries and treatments, but the tumor is still there. And every few months, the pain returns like an unwelcome visitor. When that happens, he experiences searing lower back pain, sciatica that runs down his leg, muscle spasms, and this intense cramping that lands right in the middle of his foot. There's also a lot of numbness, some of it temporary, some of it permanent. Every few months, Bryan has to undergo a special procedure. Think of it like a spinal tap, to relieve pressure caused by fluid buildup around the tumor. It helps. But it's not a cure. He lives in a cycle of pain, recovery, and preparation for the next round. How do we hold space for people whose pain we can't see? When someone says, "I'm hurting," but they're standing tall, smiling, even laughing, do we believe them? My mental illness: bipolar disorder in a mixed state. At the same time Bryan was experiencing his physical symptoms, I began feeling the mental symptoms of bipolar disorder creeping in. It started with sleep, or rather, the lack of it. I had been in a depressive phase just a few weeks earlier, and when sleep began to fray, I knew what was coming: hypomania. But this time it wasn't the energetic, euphoric type. It was the dysphoric kind, that awful, agitated, mixed-state experience where you're not just hyped up, you're both wired and miserable at the same time. I was irritable. So irritable that it didn't feel rational. I knew I wasn't being fair. I knew the emotions were disproportionate. But they still filled the room like static. I found myself withdrawing, needing rest, craving solitude, trying to protect the people I loved from something I couldn't control. Sound familiar? That's exactly what Bryan was going through. In a totally different way. Have you ever felt like you were watching yourself from the outside, wondering why you're reacting so strongly? Mental illness can feel like that: loud but invisible. Two different illnesses, one shared reality. When we really stopped and looked at it, the realization was undeniable. Our behaviors were almost identical. When Bryan's in pain, he gets quiet. He isolates. He needs sleep. He doesn't have much energy to give, and he gets frustrated more easily, not because he's angry but because his body is screaming. When I'm in a bipolar episode, especially a dysphoric one, I do the exact same thing. I shut down. I stay in bed. I get quiet and moody and hard to be around. Not because I don't care, but because I can't fake it. So here we were, two people with different diagnoses, living inside the same experience. How many times have we judged someone's attitude, not knowing they were fighting internally? Maybe it's time we shift how we interpret silence, moodiness, or needing space. How we support each other, especially when we're both struggling. Normally, when one of us is down, the other steps up. Bryan makes space for me when my mental health dips. I try to handle the parenting and daily tasks when his back is flaring up. But sometimes, like in this case, we both crash at the same time. And that's when things get extra hard. We have a little one at home, and when we're both depleted, we lean on whatever works, yes, even screen time. And that's okay. We've learned to release the guilt. Because healing doesn't happen when you're burning yourself out. We do our best to stay patient with each other. We communicate, even when we don't have the words. And we try to remind ourselves that this is temporary. It always passes. And when it does, we pick up the pieces, together. If you're in a relationship where illness, mental or physical, plays a big role, how do you care for each other without losing yourself? It's a delicate dance, and you're not doing it wrong. Mental illness is just as real as physical illness. One of the biggest takeaways we want to leave you with is this. Mental illness doesn't need to be visible to be valid. You might look at someone and think, they're doing fine. But what if you're seeing them on their best day in weeks? What if they're just good at hiding it? You could look at me and never guess I'm dealing with a bipolar episode. And people see Bryan and assume he's perfectly healthy. But the pain is still there. The struggle is still real. That's why we need more compassion, more listening, more believing, fewer assumptions. What if we treated mental illness with the same level of care, rest, and empathy as we do a broken leg or surgery recovery? Imagine how different the world could be. Closing thoughts. Let's keep talking. Thank you so much for being here today and walking through this very personal reflection with me. I hope you feel encouraged, seen, and maybe even a little challenged to think differently about how we view and treat mental and physical illness. If today's episode resonated with you, please like, comment, subscribe, and share it with a friend or loved one. These conversations grow best in community, and your support really matters. And remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only. Every experience is unique. If you or someone you love is struggling with mental or physical health symptoms, please seek guidance from a licensed expert or medical professional. From our hearts to yours, this is Bipolar Talks, reminding you that healing happens in community, compassion is powerful, and no struggle is ever too small to be honored. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, be kind to others, and stay mindful, one breath at a time. With love, Bipolar Talks.